We're here with Kelsey. Thanks for coming on the High Maintenance podcast, Kelsey. How you going?
It's doing well here. Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're welcome. I appreciate the time you're taking out of your day as well. Being a nurse in the current situation, just to hopefully this is like a little bit of a break for you to just talk about training and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, training or lack thereof in this climate. Training has been pretty sparse lately, but still trying to get it done. But yeah.
Oh, really? So you had like a high reliance on gyms, which I assume are closed for you.
Right. So I mean, just this week they're kind of gradually opening, but at my gym of choice, we have to sign up for certain time slots. There can't be more than 10 folks in at a time. So it's kind of it's intermittent training when I can get it in, and then I have some materials at home I utilize when I think about it. But training at home for whatever reason is a lot harder than you would think. I don't know if anyone else out there can relate, but it's like you have all your stuff at home, but like the hardest steps are just to wherever it's all stored, and then once you get in there and get going, it's okay. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Are you talking like, do you have legit weights at home, or is it more just the mobility and stretching kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I have like a jump rope. I have a, not even kidding, I think 20-year-old treadmill. It only goes up to like 10 miles an hour. And I have a 15-kilo little bar and then two 10-kilo bumper plates. So I'm kind of limited on what I can do, but still make quite a bit happen with those items.
Yeah, for sure. Like, given what you do for your training, I can't imagine that would give you the feeling of getting a good workout at all.
It leaves me wanting some. I won't lie about that.
Yeah, and then I wonder how it's going to go if they've got a 10-person limit at the gym. Like, I don't know how busy your gym is, but I can imagine those slots would fill like heaps quick.
For sure. And then especially during like those, popular times, like right after work, like, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, stuff like that is where people are rushing in to get there. They don't have group classes anymore, which was a huge part of it. And so that at least makes it a little bit easier to get in, not having to fight with like the group classes, but still pretty trying to get in there. But I should count my blessings. At least like I'm able to go in. There are some people who still can't and haven't been able to get into a gym for many moons, I'm sure it seems. So I'm pretty fortunate that if I find a time, I can at least get in there and get some stuff done.
Yeah, it seems interesting that you even have the gyms opening, because from Australia's perspective, America's still getting hit quite hard. I don't know if it's like the details are more that it's like we hear America, but perhaps it's just New York that's getting smashed, for example.
Right.
But we've only had, I'm in the state of New South Wales in Australia, and we had 3 cases in the last 24 hours.
Oh,
but
wow.
we still have our gyms closed with no idea really yet when they'll be getting open.
Right.
Are you like, would you feel comfortable going back to the gym anyway?
I do, just because like there's never hardly any people when I'm there, so I'm not really, I'm not really around a lot of people when I've found a time to go in. And then my gym owner is doing such a fantastic job. So those like sprayers that you use to like spray weeds with, you can kind of fill up the little tub, and it's got so he's got that like just like jam packed full of like sanitizer, and does that like every couple hours, just like he's spraying for weeds, but he's just spraying for the COVID. So I mean they're taking a lot of good precautions, and if I see more than so many cars in the parking lot, that I just kind of stay away anyways. I'm more concerned, not so I mean like of course I don't want to get it, but with my job I'm more concerned about keeping it out of the assisted living I work at, because I do work with a more vulnerable, population, they're elderly and stuff like that, where like if they get even like influenza or the common cold, it can take them out permanently. And so that's just something I'm really cautious about too.
Yeah, that's why sticking with that 15-kilo bar whenever you can.
At
home.
Like trying to kind of just go in like just whenever necessary. Like if I want to hit something like just really super heavy, find time to do that. Otherwise I do make time just to do it at home.
Yeah. What I usually do, Kelsey, when I have people on, the first question I like to ask, I just kind of wanted to see how things were in your neck of the woods, like over in America with the current situation. But what I usually like to do is get you to talk about your training background, like kind of where you started your fitness journey, whether it was as a kid, a teenager, an adult, and where you are today with your training, and if it's changed over time. And
Definitely. Yeah, that's a pretty loaded question, because I would say, like,
I thought it would be for you. Yeah.
from a young age, I've always been really interested in, sports, athletics. My dad coached like our Pee Wee basketball team when I was just a kid, like, 4 or 5 years old. So I've always been, involved in some kind of, athletic competition kind of sport. So when I was younger, I did I did soccer, I did basketball, and then into high school where I did, basketball, track, cross country. I did soccer for a while. And then I was on the dance team. So, I always get like shit about that, if anyone ever sees me with my little pom-poms or whatever, but
I've seen you dance. I've not seen the pom-poms though.
I was more coordinated back then when I actually had something to do. And then I actually got the opportunity to run college cross country and college indoor and outdoor track as a freshman in college. And then my sophomore year is when I got pregnant with my daughter. So obviously I wasn't doing much running then. But then it wasn't until, I would say, like my daughter turned a year or two that I got into lifting. I'd kind of done what I think a lot of women do when they're trying to lose weight, which is like crash diet, just spend like countless hours on treadmills and stair climbers, and really just for lack of knowledge, just dieting into the ground and doing cardio and upon cardio. But I did discover lifting when my daughter was about 2 or 3 years old. Had started training with someone who was familiar with powerlifting, and he had suggested me doing a meet one day, and I said, all right, well, if you can like get me ready for it so I don't make a total ass of myself. And
how much prep did you get?
I think we worked together for about maybe 6 months before I did my first meet. Okay. So it was a decent amount of time, but I mean, my numbers were pretty pedestrian compared to where they're at now. And I definitely like to tell folks that, because, like, how do I get this deadlift like yours? And I'm like, oh, shit, it did not start out like that by a long shot.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, of course, powerlifting is kind of like the meat and potatoes of my training, but last year I did my first ever bodybuilding show, so training kind of shifted for that, and that's kind of where I'm at now, is just now it's just about moving in any way that I can. Working out is kind of far and few between work and parenting and stuff like that, so it's just making short attainable goals for myself, like I want to do make up some kind of little circuit I can do in my garage with running and the weights that I have, and at this point, until things can go back to quote unquote normal, it's just getting some kind of movement in. Maybe it's going for a bike ride with my kids, or like spending the entire afternoon on our little trampoline, or whatever the case may be. But at this point, it's just to stay moving.
Yeah, I think that's the most important at the moment with all the lockdown. If anyone had any reliance on gyms, it is just about, if they feel they can't do anything, just about getting some movement going. Absolutely. Whatever it is.
Absolutely.
But if we can jump back to that part of your life where it sounds like you were quite athletic as a child and teenager.
Yeah.
But when the pregnancy occurred and then you had your daughter, and then there was that 2 year in between before you found weightlifting. Mm-hmm. What was that whole period like? Was it that through the pregnancy you kind of weren't doing anything, so you put on unwanted weight, and then for 2 years, within that 2 years that she was 0 to 2, you were doing the things you mentioned, like crash dieting and cardio, and then you discovered weightlifting from that? Or was it kind of weightlifting was the thing that quote unquote got you off the couch again since the pregnancy? Like, how did that whole process work? I'm interested to how that catalyst that got you interested in weightlifting.
For sure. So when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was still navigating through my bachelor's of science degree in nursing. So,
Yep.
you know, if you're not really familiar with any kind of nursing program, I mean, it's just you're always doing something, whether you're at the hospital, doing labs, clinical situations, simulations, stuff like that. There's just a ton.
So it's very practical.
Right. There's just a ton of busy work too, or seemingly busy work. And I was not finding, well, I made a lot of excuses, I think, at the time, because I was like, well, I'm pregnant, so, you know, I got to get this homework done, not knowing that, like, you know, you make time for what's important, and it just really wasn't a priority for me at the time.
Yep.
So after my daughter had turned 1, I got asked to be in a friend's wedding, just knowing I was probably a good 20 to 30 pounds overweight. So my daughter turned 1 in May. This wedding was in August. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to take pictures. I'm going to be like having to shove myself into a dress like a sausage casing. Like, good Lord, what am I going to do? And that's when I started kind of doing that crash dieting, because I'm like, I just need to lose as much weight as possible so I can feel somewhat confident in a bridesmaid dress.
Yeah.
That was my goal. So again, I mean, just really do not recommend this in any way, shape, or form. But I you know, probably was limiting myself to 500 calories a day, which I think about that now and absolutely cringe because I know better. But again, at that time, I was like, I just want to look good for these pictures, or at least feel comfortable in a dress, whatever the case may be. And I would spend hours on my treadmill, or when my daughter was awake, I'd throw her in or even asleep, I'd throw her in her stroller and we'd go for a walk. I was always moving, never eating. And sure enough, the weight did come off, but I was kind of, I don't know, that, I hate to sound crass, but that skinny fat look where they're not, you're not overweight visibly, but you just don't look that healthy either.
Yeah, you might look better in terms of how you said you did lose weight,
right?
But in terms of well-being, you were probably quite weak, quite tired, or those kind of feelings inside,
right? As
opposed to how you could feel.
Right. It just visibly wasn't a good look. Whatever damage I'd done internally, you could see that externally. And so again, for the wedding, I looked what I thought was appropriate. I could fit into a size 6. I guess that was my goal, to be able to fit into a certain, just some kind of arbitrary number that would somehow make the difference. And then shortly after the wedding, I had one more year of nursing school to get through, where I was still just kind of going through the same kind of cardio. I just wanted to maintain where I was at. I wasn't super concerned at that point about losing anymore, but I didn't want to get big like I was after I had my daughter.
Yeah.
After graduating nursing school, my family and I moved to New Mexico. I had a nursing job there, and that's where I found weightlifting, found weight training. And so, yeah, it was that kind of describes that time after my daughter was born, until I found...
What was it in the sense of you went to New Mexico and found it? Did you just wander into a gym and go, I've never picked up a weight before, so maybe I'll give that a go?
Right.
Or was there someone in your life that said, I feel like you should start lifting weights? I see you do all this cardio, but I think you would find more benefit from weights. Was it kind of, there was a catalyst person or video or something, or did your mind just get curious?
Yeah, so actually... one of the guys I ran college track with, he ended up in the same area, just, by, complete coincidence, in the same area. And I ran into him at one point and said, I really do want to get into the gym, but I kind of want someone to keep me accountable, not really knowing at the time that, he and his whole family had been powerlifting for ever. It's something they did as a family growing up. And he said, I can keep you accountable in the gym. I can show you some things. And, of course, I didn't want to go into the gym alone without any allies, because it is kind of intimidating if you've never really been into a gym before. And not to say I had never been into the gym. My dad and I used to lift when I was younger, but that was, back when I was a kid, and here I am a grown woman, and I can't remember what my dad had me do or or anything like that. So I definitely wanted something of an ally and someone to take me under their wing in the gym. And like I said, he and his whole family had been powerlifting, you know, for many years. It was something he did as a kid, and he loved it, and he kind of passed on that love to me just by encouraging me to sign up for a meet and try it out.
Awesome. So what did he have you do initially when you showed up?
Yeah.
Was it the basics, or was there any kind of test to see where your mobility was at, or was it just, yeah?
You know, I mean, it was the meat and potatoes. He's like, we're going to get you to squat, right? We're going to get you to do the bench press and the deadlift. And he said from those, we can kind of build on accessories. And, you know, it was just really, you know, those three basic, you know, what people might consider like the trinity of movements, you know. You know, so we hit, you know, squats on Monday, bench on Wednesday, deadlifts on Friday. And then we would do like accessories to kind of, you know, match whatever we were doing. So it just kind of started out as a 3-day split. And then, you know, I was finding that I wanted more time in the gym, and he went every day anyways, you know, bless his soul. He was just kind of babysitting me in there. But I was finding that I wanted more time in there, and I wanted to learn more and get stronger, and, you know, just kind of developed from there. But he was, I guess, a training partner I had for about 2 years, and we would go to competitions together and stuff like that. So we had a big time with it for sure. And yeah, he definitely kind of ignited that passion for me to start lifting and compete and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it sounds like you had the right person to introduce you to it as well, how you said the meat and potatoes of lifting, because I feel that for both men and women, but I think particularly for women, if they think of weights or adding muscle, they're going to walk in and like there's definitely, even like me when I was younger, say teenager, there was that kind of resistance to entering the weights room where the men were, and where it was banging, and where people were lifting like heavy weights that I knew I couldn't even touch. There's that intimidation factor.
Absolutely.
So if women can even break through that and take it upon themselves to go in there, they're doing like biceps curls or tricep, you know, like they're doing isolation things,
glute
and
kickbacks.
yeah and you always just wish that there was that general knowledge there, that it's like your squat, your deadlift, your bench press, your overhead press, even
those compound movements,
so it's great that you had that that initial interaction with weights, doing the right things. Have you kind of, because you have quite a large social media following on Instagram, do you try and make that something of note when you're showing what you do or talking about your history, to promote the right kind of knowledge in how to approach weightlifting? Because you would obviously have a lot of women and men that would follow you interested in lifting, but haven't actually begun their journey or are only starting.
Yeah. So I guess every now and then I try to kind of post like, you know, like a before and after transformation picture, within that trying to caption that, like, you know, this kind of stuff doesn't happen overnight. You know, I've had this long journey. And then whenever I've done articles for like Universal USA, bodybuilding.com, stuff like that, I really try to hit on the fact that like I did crash diet and it did suck and it's not healthy. And there's way better ways to achieve, you know, if it's like physique composition goals or strength goals, etc., stuff like that. So I, you know, for the different types of like modalities and outlets that I have access to, I really try to drive that home, that, you know, there's the right way and there's like the super unhealthy way, you know, and there's more than one way to skin a cat. So, you know, what might be right for me might be, you know, need to be slightly modified for the next person and so forth. But I definitely try to take that opportunity to, you know, debunk a lot of what I see on social media these days too. You know, I don't see too much of like the fit teas anymore, thank God. But
what's that?
You know, the fit teas, like the detox teas and stuff like that, where like basically like you drink like the cleanses, you know, or you just end up sitting on the pot for like 48 hours.
I wonder if that, because I remember there was a few brands that got absolutely shit on, no pun intended, because of what they were promoting. So I wonder if, you know, the good people won once, and kind of kicked that business in the ass and got it off online.
Yeah, I hope so, because there is, and even to this day, I think there's probably more encouraging and factual, or like, advice that you would feel good about promoting and following, versus that kind of stuff. I feel like there's more of a movement now for like, not like, just body acceptance, but also like, there's a way that you can sustain this kind of lifestyle. Like, you don't have to have a six pack. You don't have to, be ripped and shredded and stuff like this, but you can still achieve your goals, X, Y, and Z, and still feel good about that, versus like, if you want to try to lose five sizes in 5 weeks, then, drink this stuff that's like basically magnesium citrate, just end up.
How would you kind of approach the, because obviously you do have a six pack. I don't know if it comes and goes, but from what I've seen, like mine does, but I don't know if what I've seen online is how you usually are, but I would say your physique is quite impressive. But how do I word it? I mean, like, that doesn't have to be every woman or every person's goal.
Absolutely.
To have a six pack and have the type of physique that you have.
Right.
How do you go about kind of giving that information to people, in that this is how you look, but you don't have to look like this to consider yourself healthy?
Sure.
But the way that I do train is a healthy way to train. There's kind of a balance in there somewhere.
Right. So I think part of what I try to express too is like, genetics really does play like a huge factor. People say like abs are made in the kitchen, and that is true. But if you don't have the genetics to get like a really defined, six pack, or obliques or whatever the case may be, like, it doesn't matter like how many crunches, like how much carb cycling you do. Like, it's just, if it's not genetically in the cards, you're not going to get it. Like, I know like physique competitors who even like don't really have defined abs, even when they're at their leanest, it's just not there. And then in the same breath, like, I obviously have some pretty massive legs, and I've always had those. So like, I've always been super good at cultivating mass in my legs. And some people are like, well, how do I get quads like yours? And I'm like, well, you probably won't ever be able to get quads exactly like mine, because my genetics, kind of dictate X, Y, and Z, but I would say, like, if you're trying to add mass to your legs, to squat more, you got to squat more, just try to, do more of those, compound movements for lower body. But I guess I try to really just encourage folks to take a closer look at home. Like, what is actually going to make you happy? Like, are visible abs going to make you happy? Or is that going to be like fitting to that, like, pretty sundress you saw at the department store, for the summer or whatever? So I think I kind of try to reroute people back to like, well, what is it that you're really trying to accomplish? Because, like, for me, like this past year, it was, I wanted to look my best for the stage. But in prior years, it's like, well, I want to move as much weight as possible. I mean, visible abs is always a plus, but it's just kind of like, well, what are your goals right now? Like, what do you want now, and what do you want most? Some people like that instant gratification of like, they want to see a number on a scale, but then they don't really think long term either. So just kind of reroute people back to like, what's going to make you happy? What are your true goals? Because I never want someone to say like, it's flattering. Like, I know people come from a good place when they're saying like, you are such goals. But at the same time, I'm like, don't limit yourself to my physique, to my strength. Like, go above and beyond that. Like, have bigger quads than me, or like lift more weight than me. Like, it's sweet, but it's also a little unsettling when people say that I'm goals, because I never want someone to think that like my physique or my strength is as good as it will ever get, because it's definitely not. And there's proof with other females like on social media that just, goes to show like anything is possible. So.
And it's also specific to you. If you like totally model yourself after someone, you've already kind of set yourself up for failure. Like, sure, you can be inspired and motivated, but to replicate someone when you're a different person,
right?
Like, because I agree with you, genetics have such a massive component to the level of results that you can. Well, not the level. Everyone can achieve high results, but the type of results that you can get.
Right.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. How, like, just through what you were saying, then it sounds like your goals kind of morphed from those appearance type of goals, because it obviously stemmed from again, quote unquote, getting back in shape. But it went from, say, an appearance goal to then you were just thinking about the numbers in terms of you getting into your powerlifting. Did you find gradually happened as you got more into powerlifting, or was it a sudden change where you were kind of, I don't know, maybe you were at some point into that 6 months of initial powerlifting for that first comp and thought, I'm getting, like, my aesthetics, how I'm looking is sorting itself out. So because I'm into powerlifting, so I don't really need to think about that anymore.
Right.
Or was it kind of a philosophy change in your head that you didn't want to tie yourself to appearance as a goal?
Right.
So you focused on what you can control your appearance, but again, going back to the genetics, what you can and can't control with that. So you chose to focus just on those numbers, right, the skill of powerlifting.
Right. I think for me, it was, just having someone, take me under their wing and say, like, this is what we're going to do, where the goal was to just add more weight to the bar every week, that I kind of put out of my mind, like, you fit into the clothes you want to fit in. Like let's let that be good enough for now. And then if at some point you start feeling like unconfident again or whatever the case may be, then we can kind of like, readdress it. And that's something I did have to kind of convince myself of every day. Just based on, when I was younger, didn't have like all the self-confidence in the world. Not that I do now, but it's something that you kind of acquire the older you get, where you kind of maybe care less about what other people think and kind of more of how you feel about yourself. And so it was something I kind of had to convince myself of every day. And of course, to be able to lift heavier weights, I had to kind of come to the realization too, like, you can cut weight for competitions, but, ultimately mass moves mass. So I might, I had to, be okay with the idea of getting a little bit bigger during my training to maybe be able to move a little bit more weight, or, whatever the case.
Was that hard?
It was. When I finally came to the realization I was not going to fit into the 60 kilo class anymore, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to, because you kind of feel when you've competed at a certain weight class for so long, you kind of get stuck there. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, I'm supposed to be in this weight class. And there are some people who can stay in whatever weight class for many, many years, whether they use like, diuretics or like super crazy water loading techniques to get there. But I just knew like if I, used any of those methods, that I would ultimately suffer on the platform, because I had done like massive water cuts before to try to kind of keep fitting into that 60 kilo class that just was not where my body was happy. And it did ultimately affect my performance. So again, it was just being okay and having to like convince myself mentally, like even sometimes I'd say it aloud, that like, okay, your goal is to move as much weight as possible, so be okay with, moving up to the, whatever the 148 is, like 67 and a half kilos or whatever it is. And eventually, like, I kind of, was okay with that.
And you were stronger for it as well, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was similar for me when recently I trained for 16 weeks and completed a marathon.
Oh, wow.
And that's completely different training to what I usually do. I'm usually doing strength training. So inherently with that strength training is building mass, particularly if you're trying to actively get stronger.
Right.
And a big thing for me was, even though I feel quite comfortable within my body and how I look, it still played a part in my mind, was that I knew by doing this, I'm definitely going to lose muscle. I'm definitely going to look thinner or leaner, which was unideal in my head, just from values I guess I've developed from what I've watched or what I've consumed.
Right.
So even me, who I think is quite confident within my own skin, I have those thoughts as well. I think it's just present in the fitness industry, is a care. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad that you think like that. It could, depending on how you let it control you, be a good thing. Like you're just observational or caring. But I think that something that you mentioned earlier with getting more confident, I totally agree. And I don't think that being self-confident is getting better at things and becoming more confident because you're getting better. I think it's more developing a comfort as to what you are and who you are at any point in time.
Right.
And I think people can confuse that. They think that the confidence comes from, gaining a new skill or getting a certain job or something. And that definitely gives confidence. But I think true confidence comes from being comfortable in your own skin at whatever point you're at in your life.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There were times where I thought like, I'd really like to go for, this national record or, in the 60 kilo class. And, at some point in my training, I just thought like, I'm never going to be as strong as like Mariana, from Russia, just like that little short, cute thing that squats like massive, that deadlifts massive, that I'm like, at some point, like I just had to realize like I'm never going to be able to compete with that. And that's okay, because that's kind of her, like, that's what she does. Like, that's her job. That's her livelihood. Like this powerlifting thing is something that I do for fun as a hobby, and it shouldn't be consuming so much of my thoughts that, I get these unrealistic expectations in my head too. I think that's so important with like fitness too, is to like manage your own expectations. Like, it's okay to want more for yourself, but also don't set yourself up for failure where you think like, by the end of the year, I want to squat 500 pounds when it's just probably not in the cards, not to dissuade you from like wanting to do that, but also to just kind of rein in your own, what's actually what you're capable of doing.
Would you like to go pro with the powerlifting?
Honestly, I don't think, it would pay the bills. I don't think I could focus the amount of time that it takes to get to that level. I'm sponsored by Universal, which is an awesome sponsorship. Like, they take such good care of me. But,
that's a supplement company, right? Not
right.
the movie distributor.
Right. So yeah, Universal USA with their little red man logo. I mean, it's a pretty
I know that one.
Pretty awesome little sponsorship. And but I just being a mom, being a nurse, I just don't think that I have the time to dedicate into what it truly takes to be considered like a professional in powerlifting. And like, I'm totally okay with that, because it's never really something, I wanted to pursue at a professional level. I just really enjoy doing it. And now what's more meaningful to me is getting like my own kids involved with it, and also bringing it to my area where it's not quite as prominent. So I've been trying to like host powerlifting meets, and just get it more growing in the area, because I think the thrill of the platform is a rush that everyone should try to experience once if they can. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, the biggest barrier here is just that there's no accessibility to meets. When I was first starting out, I would have to drive at minimum like 5 hours to get to wherever the meet was. So I'd have to road trip, but bringing it closer to home, provides more of an opportunity for my own community to get a barbell in their hands and show what they can do on the platform, which is more meaningful, I think, to me, the older I get and the more I get into the sport, is to provide that opportunity for others. So.
Yeah, I think that every now and then with myself, with the Olympic lifting and gymnastics strength training, I look at some of the stuff that's available now, and I think, I wish that was around when I was younger.
Right.
And then it's not like I'm not doing it myself, because that's what I try to do. Sure. Is create content that people can access to help them, like give them information they didn't have. But yeah, it's kind of that thought, I think, where I think, I wish I had that when I was young. But then I think, well, these people are just actively putting what I'm thinking right now into action and creating that thing. So I think anyone that is kind of into something like powerlifting, Olympic lifting, gymnastics, strength, any kind of niche activity that they think is so beneficial, not owes it, but should kind of bear a bit of responsibility to try and contribute some of that back to a community that might be lacking
Absolutely.
in those areas. Because when I was young, there was no lifting platforms where I locally lived. There was no really access for adults to a gymnastics center, and that's changed, and that's thanks to people thinking exactly how we're kind of thinking right now.
For sure.
And putting it into action. I liked what you said as well about the platform definitely gives this kind of feeling that you can't replicate just going to the gym, and can almost leave someone with a feeling that motivates them to get back in the gym and train for their next meet. I remember it overwhelmed me. My first Olympic lifting competition, I'd snatched so many times, and then my first snatch on the platform, my first time on the platform, first competition, was an attempt of a snatch that I'd never seen, felt, or done before. It was this bent arm, ultimate hip thrust forward type of movement that was just so bad. And I think it was just like, not necessarily the pressure, but just, I don't know, just how you described it, the overwhelmingness of it. But not to say that's a negative thing. It was just a lot in one moment. And then the next two lifts were fine, and then the clean and jerk was good. And it felt awesome to compete. But I wanted to speak to you before, because I wanted to ask about the bodybuilding. But before we do that, you were just being real, talking about how you felt with powerlifting and stuff. But you actually have like quite significant accomplishments from what I've seen in powerlifting. Do you mind just unpacking your say PBs across the deadlift, squat, and bench, and what some of your most significant competition achievements are in powerlifting?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna have to say it in freedom units, because I don't, off the top of my head, can't, I couldn't tell you in kilos what it would be.
I'm gonna convert while you while you say it. So
my best competition to date was done April of 2018, where I totaled over 1,000 pounds. I think it was like 1,030 some pounds.
Okay, that would be 468 kilos.
Okay, so
very good,
give or take. And then so my best squat that competition was, I want to say, like 396.
180 kilos, my PB. Very good.
My bench that competition was what was it? Maybe 191, 192. Sounds about right.
Let's see, 191. Keep pressing the wrong button. 191 divided by 2.2. 86.8 kilos.
Okay.
That's pretty significant.
So
what's your body weight you were competing at again?
I was competing at the 148. So I think I weighed in at like 144 for that competition.
Okay. And that is, that's 67 kilos. So that's,
yeah.
That's really good. And I think majority of the audience are going to be American anyway, but
you never know. Just try to accommodate the kilo crowd.
Yeah.
And then my best deadlift, and this one I know in kilos for whatever reason, probably because it's a nice even number, was 200 kilos or 440 pounds was my best deadlift in that competition.
What did that feel like?
That was my second attempt, and it felt amazing. I think I opened with like 402 pounds, and then I just jumped right away because I kind of already had this number in my head. Like I wanted to just do, I think in the gym I'd hit like 450 before the competition, and I wanted to hit somewhere in that neighborhood. Okay. So my second attempt was like 440, and then I think my third attempt, which I did not get, but I did get a bloody nose with, was like 450, 453 or 456, something like that.
I have seen that in strongman and powerlifting, getting the bloody nose, but is there anything that specifically causes that? Like, is it the fact that you're doing the Valsalva maneuver, holding your breath just for that amount of time, that pressure?
Yeah.
Or can it just be random?
Right. So that one, I just chalk up to, blood pressure PRs. You just are putting so much pressure on your body, and like you'll see people like, like bleed out of their chest. Like if they have any like maybe like pimples or something like that on their chest, they get like bleed out of their chest too, or like burst a vessel in their eye, which is, I've done that once and it's pretty cool too. I don't get many bloody noses anymore. Maybe I'm not pushing myself hard enough, but but yeah.
Now I feel like I haven't pushed myself at all because I've never had a bloody nose from it. It's weird. Like it sounds terrible, but there's something epic to it as well.
It is. It's like, what is that? And then I think part of it might have to do with like the nose torque or ammonia inhalants that, you know, folks can do before lifts as well.
Have you done that?
I have in the past, and I think that because it kind of vasodilates, you know, kind of puts you more at risk for getting a bloody nose. It kind of, you know, wakes you up, vasodilates, stuff like that. So I think that's part of it too, especially when you see it in competitions.
Are you a fan of it?
I've done it a couple of times, but I'm really not, because like I'll get some kind of blurry vision where I see Jesus's eyes. And I just, it's a little unsettling before
specifically Jesus.
Yeah, like Jesus's eyes only. It's unsettling when you're gonna be trying to squat with weight or whatever the case may be. But
wow, yeah, I remember I've only sniffed it once, and it was just because someone brought it into gym, and it felt like a punch in the face.
Yeah,
you think like it's just gonna be like a weird smell, and then it like literally hits you.
Yeah,
and it's something like you can get tolerant to it, can't you?
I think you can. Yeah,
like coffee, like everyone likes coffee because of the caffeine kick, but it gets to a point where you just are drinking it out of habit.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily give you that kick. Can ammonia do that? Where it did, so that's why you keep doing it.
Yeah.
But then you find yourself in a position where it doesn't give you that much.
Or like you'll hear people
or can it? I don't know.
I think people do get a little bit accustomed to it or reliant on it, where like, you know, they'll have to smell it not once, not twice, but maybe 3 times, or you'll hear them say something like, oh, this is a brand new bottle, so you only need like 1 hit, like it, you know, kind of loses its potency the more times it's utilized.
Right. Yeah.
You know, if it's just in like one of those like bottles, you know, sometimes they just have like the actual sticks they can snap, and I think those are a little bit more fresh, where people just kind of like, you know, shove it further up their schnoz or something. I don't know, but yeah, you see people like, you know, having different things to say about it, like in terms of the efficacy and, you know, oh, this is an old bottle or this is a new bottle and stuff like that, or taking more than 1 whiff at a time. But ultimately, I gave it a couple tries, but that unsettling seeing Jesus's eyes was just enough for me to say, you know, it's. I'll just go up and lift it. Either she's going or she's not, you know, so.
And how do you feel about future competitions? Are you still looking to improve upon those lifts?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was supposed to compete in New York this month, actually, at the end of the month.
Okay.
You know, with COVID and everything, it's been sidelined until December. And even at that time, I don't know that I would be comfortable enough traveling to that area of the States to compete, just with it being such a hot spot for COVID.
Yeah, for sure.
But I was able to, my coach did allow me to do a max out day before my gym closed down. And I was able to hit like all new gym PRs that day.
Oh, nice.
So
what were they?
My squat was 435. Bench was 215 and deadlift was 460. So
whoa.
Yeah,
Let's do a quick conversion on that. So almost 100 kilos on the bench press. That's significant for sure. Squat 209 kilos. That's crazy. And then what was the deadlift?
460.
Oh, the deadlift. Sorry, what was the squat?
435.
435. That's so close to 200 as well.
Right, yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, it was pretty, I guess.
So you're looking in good shape then.
Yeah, but and again, at the same breath, that was like kind of disappointing, because I'm like, well, now I'm gonna have to kind of rethink when I can compete again. When is it gonna be safe to travel? Like, where do I want to, try to compete? And then I'll have to kind of get back into that training mode, which I haven't been pushing myself very hard, very heavy. So surely the strength doesn't go very far, but it still takes a while to build up to it. As quick as, it, or as long as it takes to build up to that, sometimes that's how quick it leaves. So,
yeah. Stupid peaking cycles.
I know, apparently those are important.
Yeah. What was the other thing? Is there any injuries that you've got that you can take advantage of trying to rehabilitate in the time down? Can you look at it like that?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing I've been trying to do during this downtime is just increase my conditioning more. I used to really enjoy going for runs. I would, sign up for 5Ks whenever I had the opportunity, not like super long,
Nice.
but just enough to, get your ticker ticking and, something longer than a sprint, but, something you have to pace yourself for. So during this time, I've been trying to just increase my conditioning and, just not feel like an asthmatic buffalo every time I try to go for a run and stuff like that. So that's been the biggest thing. Fortunately, I've been pretty healthy. My powerlifting coach did a lot of body mechanic work with me when we first started working together. So we tried to rectify quite a few bad habits that I'd acquired over the years and, get the body mechanic standpoint looking, more ideal and more advantageous for lifting. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what was this bodybuilding? Is this a stint? Is this something that you're interested in for good?
Right.
Where did that come from?
Honestly, I thought of it on a whim because I always hear people say oh, maybe I'll try bodylifting or bodybuilding. Maybe I'll try a physique show. Maybe I'll try a figure show, this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll try it, And it
you definitely had the base for it.
Yeah. What I came to find was that that kind of prep tries you for sure. So it was just something that I kind of wanted to see mentally if I, had the mental fortitude and capacity to weather that kind of a storm. And I don't know, I guess just to see if I could do it. And then I almost, with the same excitement of being on the platform when I got on to the stage clinking around in my heels and sparkling bikini, I had a similar kind of this is fun, all of the hard work kind of comes to fruition when you're on the stage and can kind of show off, the package you worked so hard for, provided it's such a fleeting moment because you work for months on end and you get maybe 2 or 3 minutes of stage time. So that part is kind of disappointing, but I have the memories of the selfie parade and all the documentation of my progress as weeks went on. So it was kind of
all the photos and videos.
Yeah, it was kind of fun to see that progression, and it's not something that I've totally ruled out. I had planned on prepping for something after this bot or a powerlifting meet I was planning on doing this month, but I've kind of had to rework my goals. So it's not something that I've ruled out. I'd like to do another show and see if I could bring an even tighter package to the stage and just see what else I'm capable of doing. But at the time, this current time, there's not a lot of interest right now.
Another thing about the bodybuilding I wanted to ask was the difference in powerlifting, when you compete, you're peaking in terms of strength. So you're at your kind of optimal level of performance.
Mm-hmm.
But in bodybuilding, even though physically you look amazing, you're probably at your weakest given the dehydration and the limited amount of calories to consume in order to look that way. So how did that contrast feel in competition, being both are competitions, but one you would feel extremely strong and one I imagine you wouldn't feel performance-wise that great?
Right. So I think with that, part of the process of getting stage ready is doing glycogen depleting workouts where you're maybe just doing rounds of minutes of squat jumps, box jumps, walking lunges, things that you should any other day of the week if you're fueled right, should be no big deal. But I was finding these body weight movements were bringing me to my knees, absolutely bringing me to my knees. So it was another one of those mental things I had to my coach was really good in saying you are not going to be as strong as you were. You are going to feel like shit. And he was 100% right, you know, and just having that, you know, he wasn't trying to sugarcoat anything, which was important. But, you know, sometimes we kind of feel like we're the exception to the rule. Like, well, maybe it affects other people that way, but it's not going to affect me that way. And, you know, I learned that could not be any further from the truth. Like, we're all kind of susceptible to the, especially those glycogen depleting workouts, just feeling like absolute hot garbage. So it is a little bit unsettling when you kind of, you know, pride yourself on, you know, being able to lift a certain amount of weight, but then I had to like rein myself in, you know, these aren't your goals at the moment. Your goals are to look as shredded as you can on stage. So we have to tailor our expectations accordingly. And that part was kind of hard, just, you know, that I'd been so focused for so long on being as strong as I could, you know, to just to rein it in and say, this isn't your goal. Nobody's making you do this right now. That was another thing, especially with the diet, reminding myself every day, nobody is making you do this. Yeah, it's not very fun, but nobody's making you do it. So just shut up and do it.
So how did that, is it something that you want to do again? You said you hadn't completely ruled it out.
Right.
You didn't necessarily look at being weaker as a detriment, but more so just something that came along with what was necessary to get on stage.
Right. And I think part of that is too, because with my first show, as awesome as I thought I looked, I didn't even place in the top 5, and it was a local show. So that was like a little bit defeating. One of the things I keep hearing in bodybuilding competitions is there can be somewhat politics, which is, you know, why, I mean, for the most part with powerlifting, you either get the lift or you don't. Of course, there's like those shades of gray, you know, did they hitch, did they hit depth, etc. But for the most part, it's like, did you lift the weight or did you not? When you're on stage with the bodybuilding shows, it's completely subjective to the judge's opinion. So where one of my bodybuilding friends kind of talked to me, he's like, you know, honestly, you looked great on stage, but there was a lot of vanilla and you were the only chocolate one. So you weren't the flavor of the day, you know? So he's like, had you been competing against like another kind of more jacked, is what he said, more jacked figure competitors, you probably would have placed. But it just, at those local shows where you can kind of, you know, the body types are so different compared to like, you know, figure, you kind of look for that T silhouette. So he said, you know, at that time you were just not the flavor of the day. And like I said, I thought I looked great and I was still really happy with that. But I feel like now I have, you know, something to prove, like I can place at a show, you know, so I think that kind of motivates me to want to like get back out there and try it again, maybe just a glutton for punishment, but even still. I
bet you were like the Tom Platz of any competition you went to, the equivalent of.
Yeah, it's just like the politic part of it. I don't know. I don't want that to like consume me either though, because sometimes like, again, if you're not what they're looking for, you're not what they're looking for. And it can be something as asinine as like, maybe they didn't think that bikini color was the right choice for you. So, I mean, we're talking about like literally splitting hairs on some of the critique that you could get. So, yeah, I mean, I think like, you know, one time was all right. A second time, why not? And then, you know, if I don't maybe get the results I think I should, or feel good about my placing or whatever the case may be, it might be time to just close that little chapter of my life.
What do you think of the values of bodybuilding? As in, do you think it teaches good values, or you can get good values from it? Because I feel if people enjoy bodybuilding, that's awesome. Like, go and do it.
Right.
But for someone like me, it doesn't offer much in terms of the actual sport, if you can even call it a sport, given that you're not at an optimal performance at level of competition.
Right.
But what I take away from it is great for working on weak points in terms of needing to isolate, rehab, that kind of thing. But if you do enjoy it, that is great. But in terms of something that judges you on such subjective terms, and it can be different each place you go, is it something you would be recommending to people to do or promoting to do? Again, obviously, if people enjoy it, they can do it. And if people are good, but how do you feel about when it comes down to it? The values are subjective, and you can be working on something and compete only to be told you're not good enough when you're definitely good enough. You're just not, as you said, the flavor of the month. Right.
I think that's a huge thing to consider if you're wanting to dip your toe into that world, is that you have to be okay with like a complete stranger's subjective opinion on your physique, and it may not be what you think you earned. So you have to kind of have that mental toughness to say like, okay, they, thought my glutes were not tied into my hamstrings well enough, or my lat spread looked like garbage, or whatever the case may be. I think the value for it with me came from like the discipline aspect of it. Like, your diet has to be so on point, like, you're training the cardio. So I think the value that came from it for me was just proving to myself that I could do it, and then just having everything so dialed in. The specificity to it is like, it's more so than powerlifting. Like, you can get away with like subpar days in powerlifting. You can get away with, or in training, I should say, like you can to an extent get away with a garbage diet, if that's the way you are, operate on more days than not. But like, the discipline that takes, both training and nutrition, I mean, you have to have both of those dialed in so much. So I think, the discipline aspect of it was like the more rewarding thing for me, and just proving that I could do it. But again, it's like if you have, if you have had confidence issues, like, I'm talking like body image issues in the past, bodybuilding is not going to be a sport for you to try, or something for you to try. Like if you've ever struggled with like eating disorders, or any kind of anorexia, bulimia, etc., I would not recommend it whatsoever, because I think that it does have the potential to trigger those and bring them more back to light, and rearing worse than maybe you even had it before. Because I feel like at some point you're gonna realize that you maybe like would never be, or you might feel like you would never be good enough on the stage if you didn't go through these like drastic measures, or want to be. I think another thing too that's worth noting in bodybuilding is that, you're lean for the show, but some people have a really hard time getting back to what like a livable body fat percentage would be. Like you can't operate on a, single digit body fat percentage, or you probably, unless that's like your normal, like some people are just really thin anyways, but like, stage body fat percentage versus like what's your normal happy living body fat percentage are so different. And some people, when they physically see themselves, change from like their leanest to like where they would still be considered normal, it's like such a drastic change visually that they can't cope with that very well. And I think you do see a lot, especially and that was something I was warned early on, is that, you can, a lot of people do develop, some kind of, body dysmorphia from this sport, from these competitions. So it was just making sure like mentally you were prepared for like, seeing yourself super lean to maybe not so lean, and like being able to cope with the emotions that came with it. So I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, absolutely not. But I would say, like I said, the discipline was very worthwhile for me to weather that storm.
A good mental challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Given you've got that experience on two ends of the weightlifting spectrum, from powerlifting to bodybuilding, I wanted to take advantage of having a woman on the podcast, and I think I've only done a video with one other woman, Zoe Smith, the Olympic lifter. So I'm super interested to take this opportunity to kind of get the perspective of a woman. For, say, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions or barriers or message that kind of isn't out there and should be out there for women in the weightlifting realm? Is there anything that you see is often misrepresented? Is there anything that you often see is a common barrier as to why women aren't lifting weights.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and this probably, doesn't really bar mentioning, but, like lifting makes you bulky, makes you look bulky, makes you look manly. I mean, how many times do we hear that? We see the memes and so forth, but I think part of that is very true. A lot of women kind of want to quote unquote tone, but they think the way to get there is just to be on the treadmill, on the stair climber. And I would say, with all honesty, like I've been there too, because I did just push myself into the ground doing the treadmill, doing the stair climber, just doing the just ample amounts of cardio and hardly eating anything. But I didn't ever feel like I looked healthy. I never had any muscle tone at that time. What women fail to realize sometimes is that, squatting, even your body weight, is not always going to be enough to get, leg definition. You have to throw a little bit of weight on, and it doesn't have to be crazy amounts, but that resistance training is so important in muscle development and getting that actual toned look. So I think that misconception, I think gradually over time is being debunked, which I love to see.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that I see a lot in powerlifting especially is like female like incontinence episodes, especially like on the platform, where they might like pee a little bit with a deadlift or whatever the case may be. And that's something that, it's not something to be like embarrassed of, but I think that maybe dissuades some lifters from like, wanting to give it their all on the platform, especially with like deadlifts, because that seems to be like the time that it happens the most. One thing I would say to any female listeners is that it does happen, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's normal, and it might just kind of be worth looking into, pelvic floor muscle exercises, which I think for whatever reason carries taboo, because people don't want to think that like, there's still muscles within your body and we should be working on strengthening those as well. So, just opening females' eyes, especially to the importance of like pelvic floor strengthening and so forth. After kids especially, it's easy to lose that muscle tone in there if you're not like consciously working on building it up and making it stronger. And that's when you do get those episodes of like, maybe you like pee a little bit when you deadlift or squat, or I know some people who can't even jump rope without leaking a little bit. And
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Is this coming specifically from women that have been pregnant and had their child, or is this something that women are more prone to in general, you've found?
Yeah, I think just in general, just based on our anatomy, women are more at risk for it for sure. I don't think I've ever heard of a case where a male has had like a urinary incontinence on the platform just from lifting so heavy, but I think just the way like our anatomy,
if it's going to happen to some male, it's going to happen to me. I haven't had it yet.
You just put that juju out there, you just spoke it into existence. It's going to happen now. But yeah, I think I've seen it happen with females who haven't had children, so I think it's just based on our anatomy. Of course, the older we get, and then being childbearing also plays a part into it, but it can happen like indiscriminately, to women. So just something to kind of keep in mind, and something I see a lot of. You also see, some females kind of like wear that as a badge of honor, like it's going to be my goal to like pee over this platform, which I don't judge, like again, whatever. I think, it kind of slows down
the mindset.
It slows down the meat too, really. It's a little bit selfish, because it's like, if that's your goal, then someone's gonna have to clean it up before the next person could lift. If it just happens on, because you're lifting very hard, like that's one thing. But some people like make it like some kind of badge of honor, like they have like a dog having to like mark their territory or something. I'm like, that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should just be lifting weight, and if that happens as a byproduct, like whatever, it happens. But yeah, I don't understand.
Yeah, if it's a byproduct, all good. But if it's like, God damn it, Audrey, again.
Right, exactly. So
becomes like the ammonia.
Right. It's just there. You don't even have to do the capsules. But yeah, that's another thing I see a lot of, like, women maybe just scared to take that step because they're afraid of what might happen in that regard. And it's like, it happens, but that might be another, like, you know, indication for you that maybe that's another muscle group you're neglecting or should be working on. So, you know, those two things. But I think, like, the biggest thing, of course, is that lifting will make you bulky is like is a fable as old as time, or just, you know, something that we kind of see time and time again, memes about and stuff like that. It's just really, there's no real substance to that. You know, lifting won't make you bulky any more than, like, I don't know, I don't have a good enough metaphor, it just left me, but anyways, it won't make, I mean, it does, you really have to, I mean, and I feel too, like, there's never been a time where I've looked at myself and I'm like, you know what, I feel bulky, you know, and I lift some pretty heavy weight. Same goes with, like, some of, you know, like, my female counterparts, you know, that I see on the platform. Like, I don't think I've seen a top level powerlifting female that I guess I would consider bulky looking. Of course, you know, that's always open to interpretation and is subjective, but, you know, I guess I have to say with complete honesty, like, the people, like, the females I've seen that I would consider bulky are, like, you know, women, actual bodybuilders, you know, that compete in the bodybuilding division, where, like, you know, they're running so many different kinds of steroids that makes them appear that way. You know, that's when I feel like, you know, and of course, like, if that's the look you're wanting to achieve, like, more power to you. But I guess that would be a time where I'd pause and say, like, oh, that person does, like, you know, they look bulky, they look jacked, you know, they look just freaking jacked and bulky. But again, that takes so many years of training and, you know, oftentimes so many drugs. And, you know, I think if women are just starting out and wanting to get toned, they certainly don't have to worry about that. So.
No, well, I mean, those women as well have completely, like, massively elevated their testosterone. And then I think in general it is just fear of the unknown. Sure. To be honest, it's what you associate with lifting weights as bodybuilders and big bulky guys. But I think anyone that actually just has an open mind and takes the time to learn the compound movements, I think they figure it out pretty quickly that it doesn't make you don't wake up the next day with, like, those steroid rounded androgen shoulders.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Yeah, chiseled jawline and everything,
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you about was with powerlifting. I mean, with the compound movements of squat, deadlift, bench press, these are things that once you learn the movement and then get good at, these things translate over to a lot of other movements, if you know what I mean. So you'll then be, I would say, more powerful. You'll then be better at, say, playing rugby. You'll then be better at, you know, so many other activities because you've got that foundation in those basic compound movements. And you, I can't remember how long it's been now, were involved in the Rock's competitive show, the Titan Games. Right. And I was messaging you about it when you were, I think, saying it was going to air. I don't have a VPN, which I should probably get hooked up with, but I still haven't been able to watch it and see, like, what it's all about and see you on it. But from the stuff I have seen, the show kind of has a foundation in strongman, in functional type of training, that kind of thing. So it's something that powerlifting would translate over to quite nicely. Right. So being on this show that the Rock's put together, there's a crowd, it's all exaggerated in terms of the type of activities that you're doing. Right. What kind of experience did you have doing that show, and how did you feel your background in training in the powerlifting translated to a competition like that?
Right. I think the biggest thing was the comfortability, like just being comfortable performing in front of a crowd. You know, you kind of get that nervousness, and I still do to this day, regardless of the size of the platform I'm at. My first lift is always the shakiest, I'm always the most nervous. Like, I could be doing like a hometown meet and I would still have that kind of anxiousness, which I think is a good thing. I think the minute you stop feeling that, anything you're doing is probably the minute you like gotta walk away from it, because you're, you know, probably not as passionate about it as you used to be. Yeah. But I think for that, it was just, being on that platform so many times, feeling that same anxious rush, but still knowing that like you have something in front of you, you have to do, like you're here, you're in it now, and it's like, that adrenaline kicks in that I felt so many times on the platform, that I was able to just focus on what I was doing. So I think the performance aspect of it helped more than anything. We didn't really have any way to prepare necessarily for the tasks that we had to do. Biggest reason is we didn't really know what we were doing until the night of recording. So we had no way to prepare. Of course, like I took the opportunity before filming to try to, increase my conditioning as much as possible. I just kind of figured, something I would be doing would require me to be doing it for not like a long period of time, but like certainly longer than it would take to descend on a squat and stand back up. I thought, that would make for good television if it was something like 30 seconds or less. So I think I tried to like, increase my conditioning with that as well. And, but the biggest thing I think was just being put in that position before in the past where, you allow your adrenaline to kind of take the reins, and then you just, put your head down and work whatever the task is.
Was there any, was there any challenge that you felt you steamrolled through because of your powerlifting compared to your opponent?
No, not really. I mean, and I only had one. So the competition I did was basically like, there were chains on either side of me that I was pulling that were connected to a structure that was being raised up. Once the structure reached a certain height, there was this like gate in front of you that would collapse down. You could run past, and then the next challenge was to climb to the top of the structure and to pull this little victory bell. I think it was like a 10-foot chain structure I had to climb up. Well, after you pull, so you're basically doing like a standing row almost to just pull chains to lift it. Your forearms are just, and your arms in general are absolutely gassed. So then you have to use your arms to climb your body up, So I think it was even playing field for me and my competitor for that particular challenge. She was a strongman competitor, so we kind of both had the same similar strength background. So it was a level playing field for the most part. But I can, I think I have a clip of it. I could probably send you, so you could kind of see exactly what I'm talking about. It kind of it was a hard thing to explain what the hell I actually did, because these challenges were so, just pulled out of left field, completely just wild and crazy.
They seem so random. I tried to watch one prior to the podcast just to get an idea of what you had to do, and it was these two guys taking a sledgehammer to a concrete ball, and they had to like destroy it as much as possible so that it was as light as possible, and then they had to pull a chain that raised it and then do it again. So it had very strongman-ish vibes, but because there seemed to be an intensity that made it play a lot more on the cardio than maybe a strongman competition would as well.
Exactly.
So did you do any other challenges? Like, I'm not even sure how the competition worked.
Right. So that was like my initial competition. So if I would have made it past that round, I would have gone on to what they call Mount Olympus, which is, you go head to head with somebody else who won their initial challenge. And then, basically after you win Mount Olympus, you're a Titan. And at the end of the season, all of the Titans kind of went head to head. I missed my competition by like literally a hair. So like if you watch it, and
Damn it.
I know, because so we filmed in September of last year.
Yeah.
And it didn't air until like my episode didn't air until the following February. So I had time to like get over it, get past it, kind of like heal the wound, just for it to be like reopened to like watch it again, and people will be like, you were so close. And I'm like, I know. Like even my daughter was like, Mom, you really could have won that. And I'm like, well, thanks, baby. I'm like
oh man, to be so close.
I know.
Do you think you'll get an opportunity to go back on? Like, will they do another season and bring back competitors that did pretty well?
Right. So actually they announced just this week that they are rolling out their new season this month on the 25th, I think, in the States. So
nice.
so they've already like filmed and recorded, season 2 and are rolling with it this month.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, if I had that opportunity again, I'd definitely probably take it. I think the hardest thing for me to swallow is that, it was a competition, yes, but it was also meant for entertainment. So, just bearing in mind, like, not my competition, for instance, but like some of the other head-to-head matchups seemed a little bit favored for one side than the other.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say rigged. I don't like that word, but just bearing in mind, like, if it's going to be on television, like the goal is going to be entertainment. So the best athlete might not necessarily win. It might be just the most likable person on the show.
I think that's just part and parcel with TV. There's going to be some skewing towards the drama, the entertainment.
Right.
And that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you got to meet The Rock as well, didn't you? Is he as big in real life as he seems on the screen?
Oh, for sure. And is like just magically wonderful as anyone could imagine. He just like exudes charisma from literally every pore of his body. I don't think there's anyone, man, woman, or child, who could say anything negative about him.
Yeah, I remember you saying that when I asked in chat what it was like, and it's impressive as well, because if you watch older footage of him, he wasn't always like that.
Right.
I feel like it's something that he probably has always been.
Right.
Like, well, I've not met him, so he seems like a nice person.
Right.
But he didn't always have that kind of charismatic persona, which I find it even more impressive that he's clearly put in effort to come off that way or to express himself better. It's something I kind of look up to and admire, and would want to try and like follow in his footsteps if I can improve upon my charisma and stuff as well,
Yeah, just every day try to be a little bit more mature and pleasant,
Get that smile going.
Yeah.
See, all my wrinkles occur around my eyes, I don't have like delicious smile wrinkles like he does.
Right. Yeah. Well, you can't change what you can't change, but
Yeah, back to genetics.
Yeah, again, but it was pretty awesome. I would say that it was disappointing to lose my competition, no doubt about that. Of course, like you kind of come with the expectation or the goal to win, like that's,
Of course, yeah.
But getting to hug him, getting embraced by his big Samoan arms, and he actually sang to me too. I mean, I don't really know that I lost when it was all said and done. I think like, people ask me like, what was the biggest, not regret, but thing that you wished would have changed the most of the from your time on the show, and I had to think about it. Like, of course I wanted to win, but I think my biggest regret is that I didn't hold on to him longer and tighter until security like dragged me away. So, there's always next time, but yeah.
That's hilarious. My mum's obsessed with The Rock, so she would be so jealous of you being able to hold him for even a second.
Oh, it was a great embrace. I won't lie. Yeah, it was good. Yeah.
And then, given we're speaking about celebrities, I wanted to get your I don't even think it's something that people would have an opinion on if they know what they're looking at, but your opinion on Thor's deadlift. Do you count it? Do you think there's controversy because it wasn't in a competitive setting?
I would say, it's impressive no matter how you look at it. I mean, that is some serious weight, like no matter how you look at it.
I can't even imagine.
I mean, that's crazy, right? And I would say my one kind of area where I'm like, I don't know if it should count or not, because I think about conditions on meet day. You don't get to pick the time you lift. You don't get to pick, the day, it's just like, this is what you sign up for, and things don't always go to plan meet day either. Like, maybe the projector is not working, or maybe they are having some computer glitches, so like, there's a delay in that aspect. There's, human errors that can make it so that you don't lift when you think you ought to, or conditions where you think, conditions are not ideal. I feel like in his case, he probably, being who he is, got to set the stage, right? Like, I want, to lift at this time. I want the platform to be like this. I want the Ivanko kilo plates or, whatever. I feel like, he probably, for the most part, got to decide a lot of his own environment and stipulations on the lift.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that regard, like if he had done like a deadlift only competition with the masses, I have no doubt he still would have been able to lift it. But I think also too, didn't he lift with straps? So he was going for like a strongman record or something. Did he have straps on?
I'm pretty sure he would have. Like when Eddie Hall did it, he had the figure 8 straps.
So
I would imagine that Thor would have had the straps on as well.
Right. So, I mean, in a powerlifting competition, of course, those are not allowed. So, I mean, again, any way you look at it, it's impressive. I don't think I have enough of a voice or authority to say, like, whether I think it should count or not. I just know that on a competition day, you don't always get to set the conditions, then they're not always ideal. And I feel like with him, they probably were more or less to his own specifications. So a little bit cushy. But again, I have no doubt even on a bad day, with how fast that went up, he still probably would have got it,
Yeah.
So
have you seen a side angle of it?
I haven't. I've only seen it straight on. Did he hitch?
I haven't. I'd like to see a side angle. I've not seen it myself. But you do see that kind of pause at that.
Right.
There's like a sticking point.
Right.
And there's like a little bit of adjustment. So I'd just like to see, like, I counted as well for sure, but it'd just be interesting to see on the side what went down.
Right. Yeah. And again, like, I mean, depending on what kind of if he was going for like an all-time record for like the strongman deadlift, of course you can hitch all you want in a strongman competition. It's like, as long as you can lock the weight out is how it counts. But again, like if it was like, powerlifting alone, the straps would have disqualified him from the get-go. So I don't know kind of, what all-time deadlift record he was really going for, like under what sport classification, etc.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? Because I remember a couple of years ago, I looked up the world record deadlift, thinking it would just be, the world record is this.
Yeah.
But there was a world record for raw. There was a world record with, I think it was a deadlift suit or something, or equipped.
Yep.
Then there was the world record for, I think it was the most deadlift, but it was like massive tires were served as the weights.
Right.
So obviously the distance from the ground doesn't count. And there were all these other,
Yeah.
like it wasn't just straightforward. This is the deadlift record. There was all these little variations you can make that then classified it as its own record because of the advantage or disadvantage that it gave you.
Yeah. So I guess in that regard, from, like I said, a powerlifting standpoint, the straps alone would have disqualified it. Or if he hitched, from the side and it was, visibly noticeable and he, was riding the plane of his thighs, again, would have disqualified him from the powerlifting. But if he was going for just some new all-time world record for deadlift, regardless of accessories or rules or something, which I don't even know exists, because I never try to.
I would imagine at the very least he replicated what Eddie did. So whatever record Eddie has, he did the standards to that.
Yeah.
That's as best I can guess. I didn't look into it too much.
Right.
I just saw the months leading up to it. He was promoting it, saying it was going to be a stream, and then the controversy between Eddie having an issue with it.
Right.
And, yeah.
So now they're going head to head in a boxing match too, apparently.
Now he's throwing all his training away to focus on something that needs a complete different skill set.
I know, which just goes to show, like, try something at least once, give it the old college try. So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. To me, not being like a psychic or anything, but I can picture it being either one of them's going to get dramatically knocked out and it's going to be epic.
For sure.
Or neither's going to get knocked out and it's gonna go the full distance, and they're gonna have like their hands on their hips. They're gonna be like, you know, the jabs that kind of go out and then fall before they come back to their face, and could go one of two ways.
Yeah.
With big men, it always does.
Right. I mean, if nothing else, I think it'll be pretty solid entertainment. So in either event, but yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna watch for sure. We'll wrap it there, Kelsey. Thanks so much for coming on. I think there was a lot of really valuable stuff that we spoke about today. So thanks so much for coming on. If people want to follow you on your social media or anything else, what do you want to plug? Where can they find you?
I guess Instagram is where I post most of my training information and, you know, body physique updates, etc. Sometimes just some crazy stories about my kids doing the most, driving me crazy, but that's going to be Kelsey Horton and then 1989, so first name, last name, and birth year. Pretty easy to find me.
I'll make sure I put it all in the description. We should do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
Kelsey, maybe after a competition that you've done, a powerlifting meet, or if you decide to do the bodybuilding again, or they bring you on as a Titan boss.
Who knows? Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen. But thanks again, Kelsey,
awesome.
and I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.